You're welcome along to the Maroon and White pod. This evening we're here to look back on Galway's draw with Derry over the weekend and look ahead to Galway's big clash with Donegal this Sunday in Pearse Stadium. I'm joined this evening by Jonathan Higgins and Eddie Hoare to look back on the Galway Derry game. Firstly, Eddie, coming to you first. The game on Saturday, could have lost it, could have won it. Draw, do you think in the end a fair result?
Yeah, I think from the interviews afterwards, you would have picked up from both sets of management and some of the players that probably it's a game that could have gone away from either team. And from Galway's perspective, going up there, I'd say at the start of the year, they would have been looking and saying if we could get a point away to Derry, having won the first two games, they'd definitely have taken that. So, yeah, at half time, you would have said it's Galway's to win. But with the new rules, and you've seen it in Killarney as well with Kerry and Dublin, it's a whole new dynamic. And when a team gets momentum and a swing on you, it can change very, very quickly. But to be fair to Galway, they did knuckle down. We got a good 2 point free from Shane Walsh. Could have won it in the end, but I think the draw on the balance was the fair result.
Jonathan, you're obviously up in Celtic Park at the weekend. Did you feel it was a fair result in the end?
Possibly was, yeah, it probably was, given the dynamic that Derry showed, particularly in that third quarter, where probably the first time really of note this year where the Derry crowd have really got engaged and got behind the team, and you could really feel the momentum swing back in Derry's favour. I think it was largely helped. Lachlan Murray came on and shot the
Mm.
lights out. I think he got the TG Carr man of the match, if I believe. I think I saw him wheeled out, which was unusual for a substitute to come on. And you consider the way Shane was playing in the first half, you would have said at that stage he was a shoe in, or the likes of John Maher again, who I thought was absolutely outstanding in the middle of the pitch. Galway will be disappointed. Look, if you want to go with the maroonest to maroonest glasses, you'll probably, you look to a game that finishes a draw. You look to one of Murray's efforts, which was clearly wide.
Yeah.
Um, and you will look to the very, very harsh call on Conor Gleeson for a rule that we got whispers of during the week afterwards that was sort of brought in, but not really brought in, and a sort of a criteria, but not really. 20 seconds for the kick out. And even still, there's a guy there, I think he's one of the goalkeeper trainers. His name slips in my mind.
Oh, Donald Doc Hughes, or I
Yes,
don't know
exactly.
who.
That's
Yeah,
the one. Yeah, yeah, where he put the timer on it. And I think it was 20 point something. It was
Harsh.
even if the 20 seconds is being implemented, it's harsh now. And that was largely, I go back to at the start where the crowd were on their case. We were doing a couple of moments of trying to steady the ship, understandably so, but I thought that was a very, very harsh call. So you could argue there the 2 points straight away. And then if you're again looking at this, is all looking at the Galway perspective, but you think about the incident when Johnny Heaney came on, and there was a bit of confusion who was actually coming on, and we were across the far side, and you're stuck behind a glass in a press box on the far side, and you couldn't really hear the PA system. So it looked like at one stage it was Sam O'Neill making way because he kind of ran towards the sideline. But Johnny Heaney comes on, and then a second later, I think it's the next phase, we get done for the 3-on-3. So little moments like that. But look, there's no way of buttering it up. As good as go we were in the first half, they simply weren't good enough in the second half. And now maybe that's fatigue, maybe that's the changes that were made. But ultimately, two scores and a half of football isn't really enough to get you over the line. That being said, I think Corey touched on it. You got to draw away from home, stay unbeaten. I think you're going to be happy. And particularly, I talked about those small moments, but like John Daly was back in the team. Look, we all know I'm a big John Daly fan, but like that block in the end could prove absolutely crucial. It takes the pressure off. Had the game slipped away, it's a whole different conversation. But he got the block on, and goal
he
we
got
saw.
across excellent at one stage too on Paul Cassidy, even just to shivel across to him. I think it was in the second half when Derry kind of mounted that comeback, but it was super defending by him as well.
Yeah, and he cleared the one off the Nile from McNichol, came forward. Who I have to laugh though. Paddy Daly after the end of round one was giving out about the 12 v 11 and goalkeepers, and then he's just came full circle and thrown an outfielder in goal. I think he's never played in goal prior to the last two games for Derry, I believe. But he came forward and he was just bombing on for the whole of the second half. He had a shot like somehow Daly cleared it off the line, went over for a point. So like he had key interventions, was heavily involved in a lot of that attacking in the first half as well. Where Galway went for the Geigenpressing model. Like we thought this was going to be one of the ways that you would see teams implement with the new rules, where it's just that full court square press up. We saw flashes of it in McHale Park, particularly after half time. You You could see Skills Morris was all over. It was the curve in one from the sideline, can't go back to the goalkeeper, out for the 45. But they seemed to do that for the majority of the first half. And look, it had huge effects. I think we're 9 up at one stage. But at the
Yeah.
same time, it is very energy sapping. And look, as Eddie touched on there, as we saw in Killarney, games now swing, and maybe it's like hurling back in the day, but 8 points is really nothing. There's no way of closing it out. And
Especially with kickouts as well. Before, kickout was the possession effectively. Well, if you lost it, whereas now it's out in the mix again. And when you have the momentum, it definitely, I think, favours the team.
Yeah, it was a pure lottery over the weekend. Even
Mm.
that Dublin Kerry game, like you just, there's just so much bodies around there now. It really is a lottery to get that possession in your hands in midfield now.
Mm. Absolutely, yeah. Whereas before, obviously, keepers were expected to hold possession, and you saw for numerous times you'd see Cluxton, he'd be getting all his kickouts away. Whereas now it's just that bit more competitive and a lot more difficult, and makes for, like I said, more games can sway very much, and leads can be diminished quite quickly.
Just on that, Eddie, like the goal draw at the weekend, it's 5 points out of six. Overall, when you take that and they're still unbeaten and they get 5 points out of six, it's still very much all positive.
Yeah, definitely. And I'd say Pádraig would be happy 5 out of 6 points, but equally he would know that probably Galway have played the three probably easiest, well, not to say easiest, but probably that's a lot more challenging fixtures to come. Obviously, they played Armagh, who are All Ireland champions, but we're missing a lot of players. And the buzz in Pearse Stadium, first night under lights, I think Galway were well ahead there and had the momentum. Again, Mayo looked to be a little bit in transition. They just don't seem to be at the same level they potentially were at. And maybe they need to integrate in more younger players, which they have been doing, which will be a slower burn for them league-wise. And then obviously going up to Derry. But next weekend, if you lost in Derry, you'd be a lot of pressure on to get a result against Donegal. It takes maybe that bit of pressure off, albeit, yes, in Pearse Stadium, they'll want to win, but having secured the point last weekend, it's not the be-all and end-all. Tyrone then in Tuam a few weeks after will probably have the Errigal Kieran guys back, so will be. I thought Tyrone will bring more in this league with Malachy O'Rourke, but they obviously have lost the Errigal guys. When they do come back, they'll add a lot to them. But yeah, and then Dublin, I think, and Kerry to finish, or Kerry and Dublin. So arguably probably the four most difficult fixtures to come. But in the main, he'll be happy 5 out of 6 points. You'd probably say, give or take a point here or there, they'll probably be safe with 5 points. They should be. Not sure, but the six will definitely should see them safe. So they're well on the way with, I think, is it 3 home fixtures? Or no, they're in Croke Park against Dublin, and Kerry is away, is it? Is it home? Is it home?
Yes.
So 3 home fixtures and 1 in Croke Park. So I think they'll take that.
Just on Loughlin Mary's effort in the second half, did you feel that was wide as well, Eddie?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it curled, it wrapped around the back of the right post. Yeah, definitely didn't come in, and I'd say I didn't. I don't think that even Loughlin Murray would say otherwise. It was definitely it was wide, but that can happen. It tailed a bit around. I think Shane had a similar effort actually in the second half, but it was flagged wide, wasn't it? I think it was. Yeah, it came, but it was around the left, and it did go around the left, and they flagged it wide. But yeah, a wide for me.
Yeah, you could almost see Loughlin Murray in his interview after the game. He was trying to, I'd say, convince people that it was over. The first half, Jonathan, Dylan McHugh's goal, it was just an excellent move, and there was something Galway were excellent at in the first half, with their angles of running and just players running constantly from all different angles. It did really cause Derry huge issues in that first half.
It did. Now, you have to forgive me. It's been a fairly hectic few days, so I haven't got to watch the game back yet. But from what I remember, it was a phase of play, and Paul Conroy did a backdoor cut, or kind of almost a straight backdoor cut, and it took them all out. But what I loved was, and now I think it got a nick as well from first viewing, is Dylan didn't just like hammer the ball. It was almost like an inside of the foot, side-footed effort where he kind of placed it in the middle of the goal, and it did get a little bit of nick, but it was so I thought it was the calmness of it when he lit up. Like, don't forget as well, there was another I thought it was potentially a penalty. Again, I'd have to watch it back. John Daly does this outrageous pass that splits them open, and it's Matthew Tierney coming through in goal, and he's clattered. If he's not inside the line, he's almighty close to the chalk of the line as well. So Galway were doing that. Derry were quite, I suppose, with such is the modern setup, even with the new rule enhancements of being zonal, so that allows guys to pull in around and find pockets of space. And Galway, by and large, did that well. The only thing that Galway would probably be frustrated on that type of setup is there must have been 3 or 4 times in the second half where Conor Gleeson gets that, and if it's soccer, it's an inside left position. That little gap between the wing and centre forward on the left hand side, he must have got the ball 3 or 4 times there, as we said. Had one effort that he'd probably be disappointed at, another few that he kind of turned down, and it's almost like Derry were leaving him there with it. If Galway had exploited that a bit more, they could have got a couple of points at that stage just to kill Derry off completely. Instead of
Yeah,
Derry,
there was one on the edge of the D which you thought he was going to line up for in the second half. They seemed, as you mentioned there, they seemed to kind of want him to have the ball.
yeah, they're like these are small little things, and I think the key for me coming into it was could Galway show something different. Well, obviously, you want to get the result, but the way things are now, I think safety is pretty much all but secured. It would take absolutely something ridiculous. So it's not like last year where we're absolutely balling for points come the end, and you're kind of looking over your shoulder, and you're that mixed with kind of that injury crisis that Galway had last year. This year, like what have you seen? You've seen a lot more streetwise with the ability that they have options and strength and depth that you're able to bring players on. Players are getting managed. The likes of Sean Kelly is getting managed. Shane doesn't have to bust himself the whole time for say. Rob Finnerty's coming back now. He's got 2 appearances under his belt. Killian inside is really making that position his own. Killian McDade out the middle was a missed, but like wasn't available. It could be given the opportunity to be given the night off. Like Boris said, he didn't want to fancy him a 7-hour bus trip, which is understandable. And Damien as well, like being at that luxury of being able to just wait rather than have to throw him in and kind of get him back and throw him in again, and that kind of rinse and repeat model that we saw through the end of last year, which the whole of last year pretty much undid us at the end. So the fact that they've been able to be a lot more streetwise with Minnis, and even look at Daniel Flaherty started both games, didn't start. John Daly comes in, played well, so on and so forth. The fact that they are able to shuffle the deck a bit more, that is aided by the fact that yes, there's bigger numbers, but also the pressure is off a little bit here now as well. And look, I would personally, I think I've touched on it a few times, I would like Galway just to get to Croke Park and win the league out, just for my childish sort of mentality of just getting there and getting a not that hoodoo, but just getting success as a group. It doesn't matter what it is. Yes, we've won Connacht a good few times, but go to Croke Park, get a cup, no big celebrations, but bring it back home. New York is a week later, so I think there is that opportunity this year. I don't think it's going to be like Mayo and Derry the last couple of years, where that's hoodoo, where they've gone flat to the mat for the league. But to me, from a selfish point of view, that's what I would like. Probably looking a bit small-minded, but I think there's benefits to doing that, of just going up to Croke Park and getting a big victory.
And you're not the first person to say that either, Jonathan. Like a lot of people who've been on the podcast have talked about what a trophy could do for this team in Croke Park, particularly Eddie too. When you consider 2 All-Ireland final defeats in the last 3 years, it does feel like something that this Galway team are going after early on the year.
Yeah, definitely. And similar to maybe in 2022 when Cian O'Neill came into the setup, you would have said that was an important year for the group. They responded really well and got to an All-Ireland final. And equally this year, having lost the final in obviously 22, they went on to the final and lost the final in 2024. Cian O'Neill heading away as well, and there probably was a bit of pressure on the group. Mickey Graham has come in and replaced him, and there has been a bounce in the group, which is really, really positive. And the idea of looking to go and win silverware, I think that's something that would be really, really positive for the group. And you're doing it while also we're acknowledging that Galway are not flat to the board here. They're doing it within their confines of their squad, and they're having the luxury to be able to rest some key players and equally integrate in some younger players as well. So I look at the bench there, for instance, you have like Matthew Thompson is there, really good club championship for Salthill. last year. You have the likes of Jack O'Neill with St. James's. I know Conal Gallagher in our own club. He's coming back from injury as well. So they might just have the luxury to bring in some of those younger guys. Like you would have seen them do that with the likes of Daniel O'Flaherty and others last year. And they were really, really effective and have become main figures in the squad. So I think that adding that depth is somewhere it gives us that ability to be able to contest for longer in the season. So I definitely think we're in a good place looking at the likes of Dublin, who are again integrating in a lot of younger players, but they just seem to be, I don't know, but they were very good on Saturday night, albeit, but Galway seem to have a more of a familiarity amongst the group, that steady core group. They're around a longer time. There's a large part of the 2022 squad is still there. The same with last year. We haven't lost too many players, and we're adding in, like I said, the younger guys. And another one I'd add in there is Keane Hernan is back from injury as well. So it's really, really good to see him being integrated back in, and it bodes well. It bodes for a very, very competitive championship squad, really, for Galway.
Jonathan, even the names that he's mentioned there, Jack O'Neill, Colin Costello, Matthew Thompson, these players who are relatively new to the Galway squad, but Jack O'Neill obviously being there last year, but even there's a competitive edge on the 26th this year. Like you talk about them three players, a player like Liam O'Connell missing out on the 26th. Like there is a real competitive edge building now for these players to make the 26-man panel on match day.
Oh, there absolutely is. And you look at Colin Costello come on the tail end of the Mayo game, doesn't make the 26th the week while Liam is back in. So certainly keeping on the toes. And like the one thing that Porrick is exceptional at is getting that bond right down the various Galway teams. There's none of this the senior team is hit away from anyone else. Some managers have that mentality. That there's a kind of an aura and there's a kind of a bubble that wrapped up, but he's very much let the teams see each other. They can see them. There's that kind of that visible pathway is there. And look, he'll always give people opportunities. And you think back to a couple of leagues ago, the likes of Johnny McGrath and Sean Fitz would have played in and out of league games, were kept on the extended panel for the championship. And, look at them now in the team. They're two of the mainstays in the team, probably two of the standout players. Like they haven't conceded a goal already this over the course of the year. And that's both of them have been outstanding defence. They've been a big key in that. So, like, keeping things fresh, showing that pathway. And look, even Shane McGlinchey was on the bench for Mayo as well. Yeah. So I'm like, he's still in Jarlath. Do you know what I mean? Like, still playing Hogan Cup. So, like, it just goes to show, like, if you're good enough, you will be given the opportunity. And with the development squad, they played in the FBD and that panel and those structures that are in place, you get to see this year, as Eddie touched on a few players there as well, people that have had fine campaigns with their clubs, pathways there, and they'll be picked in and they'll be involved. So I think that's very, very healthy for Galway football as a whole.
Yeah, and Jonathan, just to add to that as well, and it's probably down to Porrick himself. I know, having played with him myself, the emphasis that he always had on club football, and like he gave so much to Killarea, and he really values the club game and signs on. He is giving guys the chance who've impressed last year, and I think that is good because it's, like you said, it's not a closed shop. It's not like, oh, we've picked our league panel. It's a movable panel, and if you're not performing, you won't be in the 26, and equally you mightn't be in the 35. And equally, if someone is performing, be it in club or Sigerson or otherwise, I'm sure the door is open, and that's makes for a very competitive environment. But I think it's a byproduct of Porrick himself, given his club history himself and how much he gave to it.
And the flip of that as well is, as the players on the external panel, they'll be sent back to their clubs to play league games or whatever. Again, many manager will say, no, this is us. This is the seal that you're not going to break one through. Like, or it will send the guys back at game time. So they're small things, but on the overall scheme of things, they all add up and make a big difference when combined together.
Yeah, I presume that'll obviously happen this year. It didn't happen last year, but we were probably in a bit of an injury crisis.
I think that was
yeah.
Pretty, like, that's pretty understandable. It was down to the bare bones, given the nights where I think some Porrick himself, although we saw him before the game, was actually quite funny in the press box. I'm not quite sure was it a pair of runners or a pair of boots on, but in the warm-up, he was pinging over balls left, right, and centre. The whole press box were just oohing and awing, particularly some of the Northern lads, the Derry boys that wouldn't be used to his manager routine, shall we say. He could still do a job.
Yeah, for sure.
Even if we're just talking on this Derry game, the biggest positive Eddie obviously has to be Shane Walsh's performance and the 2 pointers he was kicking on Saturday night.
Yeah, definitely. And there seems to be a freshness in his play. He looks fitter this year, and I think the break has done him good over the winter. He's obviously with club. He's been involved at the latter stages of both club and county for the last number of years. He looks fit. He looks fresh. He looks like he's enjoying it. And this 2 point model seems to really suit him. He sits in the pocket. Shane would have probably down the years been used to being double marked, whereas now that idea is eliminated under the new rules. So you're man for man, and at times he can pick up into the pocket and to be, like he can score even in the I think it was the first no the second half actually the score that he got. I was watching it and I was saying, why isn't Shane kicking this on his right foot? It's like if I was he's stronger on the right, or that's his preferred foot, but he kicked it with ease on his left boot as well. And he does that all the time. He can kick off left and right from the deck as well, which is phenomenal talent. But he just seems to be playing with the freedom and playing that sort of quarterback role in the pocket, nearly like a sort of a more advanced role than, let's say, we'd be used to seeing Paul Conroy play over the last number of years, coming into that pocket and picking off scores. So it's definitely a big advantage for Galway. And like as I said, from with his left or his right, he can kick dead balls from anywhere around that 40 meter arc. And Killian O'Kerry the same on the right side with the left boot. He's a lot of range as well.
Jonathan, you mentioned him earlier on as well, John Maher, like another exceptional performance. Just seems to be getting better each game he has in a Galway jersey. But even like the block he did obviously is well documented at this stage, but that just summed up his performance on Saturday night.
Yeah, he had a few of those in the first half, didn't he?
Yeah, I think
Yeah, like,
two in each half nearly. I think yeah.
yeah, like I think I'm at the point on here maybe a year or two ago when he's breaking through with the importance of having that brute in the middle of the field. Well, it's that multiplied by about 10 more, the importance of it now. With the modern games, we've seen more of those rooks type situation where the short kick out is taken out of the equation. Now, you can still get the odd one off. It's risky, but you can squeeze the odd one off, and Connor did get a few nice ones off. But by and large, what are you saying? 80, 85% of the time, even maybe 90%, yeah, the ball has to be horsed out in the middle of the pitch. And from there, it's just an old school roll up your sleeves and go for it. I had a chat with him afterwards, and I actually say I found it fascinating. Really, he's chat with me. It was the first time I've heard a player kind of just speak about the demands on the body of the new game, and seems to be thriving in it as well. Loving the battles. Is well battered and bruised, but loving it, and noticing the more of the demands on his body after the games with the new format. And it's great to see. Like he's just the heart and sleeve of the team, really, isn't he?
Mm, big time,
You're
yeah.
probably saying like I know McGrath is the specialist tagger now at the back, but and Shane has shot the lights out and looks as he touched on there, looks like what he did with that free in the second half to have the stones to bring that back out a couple of yards and try and take it. Never mind switch feet in the process as well. Shows a guy that's right on it. But despite all that, you'd nearly say Mara is probably going to be one of the most important people come championship, and that's just
He's going to be that player on a Conor Glass or the most important midfielder, the opposition every time Galway play.
and our primary ball winner out in the middle of the field. Now, I know there's a lot of big men around there, but he is the primary ball winner. He's the go-to guy. I'd say he's the guy if Connor's under pressure. That's it's going to be horsing out his direction.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, and I concur fully with that. Like it was a really good interview afterwards, Johnny, and you could just see how I suppose assured he was in the role he has, and how I suppose how much he's relishing it. You know, just the one-on-one battles in the middle of the pitch, and it's really we're seeing him just go from strength to strength after last year, and yeah, it's great to see because sometimes guys who have a good breakthrough season and then have the accolades, it's hard to follow it up. But he's just like becoming. He looks like he's going from strength to strength, and will continue to do so. Like four, I think, block downs, definitely two in the first half. I'm not sure, maybe one or two in the second half. He got a score as well, so he's just looks like he's developing into one of the best midfielders in the country.
I think it was a turnover on Loughlin Murray in the middle third. at one stage, and you could even see how much that meant to Mara. I think there was two or three Galway players involved at that time, but they're just so eager to get the ball back off him.
Yeah, definitely. And as I said, going back to Johnny's interview afterwards, he looks like a guy that's really relishing that. And again, the game allows for more one-on-one battles, and his physique and his ability to get up and down the pitch. And like most players would not like the 20-second turnaround from the kickouts, but he's the type of player that just has that natural engine to be up offensively and back in the middle third and be able to contest for kickouts. And he's definitely, like I said, really relishing it. And then obviously with Paul beside him, like footballer of the year, like it's a real luxury to have players like that. Paul can kick the 2 pointers for fun in that pocket. And it's great to have seen the likes of John the last day on the shoulder, at ease, at pace, stroking over with his right boot. And that's something he's added to his game over the course of the last number of years since integrating back into the squad. It goes back again to club form. He was really, really good, I know, under John O'Mahony that season, probably one of the players of the club championship. And his form was recognised, he was brought in, and he's really delivered.
Jonathan, you touched on it at the start, like 110 to 4 points up at half time. Galway only managed two scores after that. On 38 minutes, Keane Darcy gets a point and to put Galway 111 to 5 up. Then Shane gets a 2 pointer on 65 minutes, and that's all Galway scored. You could even tell by Porrick in the interview after that he was probably a bit frustrated with the performance in that second half. And it did sort of feel like Derry did have us pinned in that last quarter, particularly of the second half.
They did, yeah. And ultimately, Galway had a lot of possession, say, just after half time. The ball down in multiple phases of possession. A couple of those that we touched on there, they were kind of Connor was left to one side, maybe isolated a little bit, but like they just didn't get enough scores. And you touched on two scores in a game isn't going to be good enough at all, at all. And yeah, look, there's something, no doubt, that they'll be working on to try and improve, because you just can't go that long without getting. And I know there was a bit of a breeze, but it's hard to describe. It didn't really favour, from what I could see, any team. Was more kind of across the pitch. You wouldn't say the breeze was the reason Galway weren't able to get things going. I think it was just a case of a lot of energy was expressed in the first half. I think with the pressing, etc. And like I don't necessarily mind that too much, because look, the key what you're looking at in situations like this is to try new things. This is all a huge learning curve, done in public, albeit. So the fact that they can add that press and style of football, and they know it works now to the game, I think that's important. They'll certainly know as well that they need to do a lot more to try and negate when the team gets a bit of momentum. But ultimately, not getting the scores after half time was the difference, really.
Yeah, it does seem like something that we'll be able to drill home, obviously, to them this week now, and there obviously need to be a big improvement from that. But there's a big one coming this weekend, 3:45 on Sunday, live on TG Car, Galway Donegal. Jim McGuinness coming to Pearse Stadium this time in a different capacity. Obviously, last time he was here, he did that famous training session with Galway that
I was
they
done in
did.
Tuam. I was done to get your
Oh,
facts
that
right.
was Tuam. Was that Tuam? Was it? Yeah.
The back window, remember?
Yeah, yeah. But obviously that was the last time he was with Galway and with this group, but a different capacity this time. But just on Donegal, like Eddie, even there against Dermot on Sunday, like Donegal are flying at the minute.
Yeah, they are really, really going well, and the game looks like it's suiting them. Paddy Mogan there, cornerback. It reminds you of the likes of Frank McLean and Lacey coming up the pitch years ago. They look like they're in a good place. They look like a team has a lot of work done over the winter. So look, Sunday's going to be a big, big test for Galway. Not the be all and end all, but it'll be you could say that whoever wins on Sunday will probably most likely get to a league final. So it's a big, big game for both sides. But yeah, definitely it'll be a good gauge and a good test of where both teams are at. But Donegal, definitely going really, really well. Watched them on Sunday against, albeit I would say I think Armagh are struggling a little bit. I'd say they haven't got the All Ireland bounce normally the likes of a Dublin or a Kerry usually get. They just seem to have stagnated a little bit, and they'll be disappointed. They've lost, obviously, Rian O'Neill as well, who might be back later in the year, but they just don't seem to have got the bounce. They look stale. But that said, Donegal were very, very impressive and never looked like losing on Sunday. But next weekend, it'll be a big, big test. Donegal, one thing I would say, they haven't been scoring too many goals as well. I'm not sure how many they've scored, but I think a lot of it, they seem to racking up a lot of points. So that's something that they'll need to be obviously working on. But it'll be interesting. Big pitch, Pearse Stadium as well for those runners coming from deep. So it's going to be interesting to see how they can be tracked and how Galway manage it. But I'm sure they'll have a plan in place for them.
Just on that, because you mentioned about goals for Donegal, and it's a question that came in from one of the listeners, Adrian Cormacan on Twitter. On Galway's goal count so far in the league, obviously only two goals so far. And the question that came in from Adrian is, why do we not create enough goal chances? Is that something you've noticed, Jonathan?
Possibly. Look, there's a bigger picture there if you want to take a step back. What's the reward are going for goals at the moment, considering
Yeah.
particularly we're blessed with two-pointer shooters. Look, the big caveat as well is whatever way you want it, you can have all the rules in the world and any of the rule changes. We're playing in winter football and pitches are dog heavy. And like it was only just saying there, the Pearse Stadium is in rag order at the moment. The weather obviously we've had is just unprecedented, but it would have been in a weird way. It would have been nicer if it was the Tyrone game was the following week and they were switched around, just in terms of giving the pitch a bit of time to breathe and get ready. But look, such to be are the fixtures. But yeah, no, there's a lot. I think like when you have the dry sod and the bouncing ball come summertime, it will make a big difference. I think also as well, I think you got to factor in is Damien Comer changes the outlook, changes the setup of Galway team, because he can be that ultra focal point. He can hang around the edge of the square and be there and be that target, and then everyone can play off it. And that'll change Galway's potential, having that option to stretch, and particularly if you are up against that zonal press, and particularly as well with the tweak in the advanced mark inside having the free hit. Like you can just see Damien making hay on those particular, can't you? Like everything's set up if he can get his body right. And I'm kind of in a weird way, I'm kind of glad to see him being and the medics and the rest of the management being ultra cautious with him and not rushing him back. And like we had him back last year against Mayo in the championship in the kind of final. We thought this is it, this is a summer made, and it didn't go to plan after that, and he's clearly struggled come the end of the year. But it fit Damien Comer, the edge of the square with the 3-on-3, with the advanced mark, with a drier pitch. It's going to completely change the Galway attack. Probably.
Warwick obviously mentioned to you that he won't be playing this weekend after the match.
Yeah, and I'm kind of glad to hear that, because like the last thing you want is a Donegal lad making a hero of himself, hanging and pulling and dragging off him. Damien doesn't need that. Damien doesn't need to prove to anyone. It's not like someone else coming back, having to build up a bit of match fitness, because Damien will just come in, tog out, and go on the edge of the square and catch a ball and bulldoze his way through, and then use his skill or whatever. Like he's not a player that you would say is going to need a lot of match time to get fully match fit. I would suggest. I know I'm open to correction on that, but like there's some players need a bit of time to try and kind of get fly to the ball and build themselves. So you would say with Damien, you'd be able just to kind of take a strip or two back. He's a bit like Eddie in the day. You can just park himself in.
I was just going to say, Johnny, these new rules, I'm planning on maybe a September comeback.
You said
timing up in September.
You get the 2-point arc moved out a bit for you, will you?
As we said beforehand, I have the linesman in Westside moving the 40-yard arc in a few yards.
I'll be on top of the 21 in no time.
We have to get our orange flag in Westside as well. We might be trying that out in a few weeks.
Yeah. So look, I think that will ultimately freshen things up, and also like the fact that Galway have so many shooters, and the fact that fitness is clearly an issue. Not an issue, but in terms of it's just so heavy, and it's a different game at the moment. Ultimately, like, do I expect to blast the goals on Sunday? No, I don't. Be brutally honest with you. This is a game which I won't say is a free hit, But like everything is set up for Donegal now the way they are. They're like Derry last year under Mickey Hart, that they're going flat to the mat now for the league. And it feels like there's a bit of, is ego too strong a word, but in terms of McGuinness is back and he wants to make a statement after last year. It was Mickey Hart back with Derry last year and all that was with that. And he really think that league meant more to Mickey Hart than it did necessarily to Derry football. And I think the conclusion over time will prove that as well. They fell off the cliff because like bringing the Glen lads back and play them in Kerry was madness. And it proved to be over the course of the campaign. So I think there's a big thing McGuinness wants to. There's an aura, isn't there, with McGuinness, and the fact that they're set up and they're coming to Galway to two form teams, but you'd be wary enough the fact that look, they've done a lot of training. Let's be as political as we put into it. I'd say that they were certainly back training before Galway were. Let's put it that way. And the training camp that they had, etc., etc. So they are at a different scale, you would imagine, in fitness. At the same time, Galway obviously won't roll over, but you would say right now that Donegal they're a dangerous one to watch now on Sunday.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting dynamic as well when the stats are done at the end of the league, just to see the number of goals scored. Because if you take we have the range of shooters, and a lot of teams have, to score a 2-pointer. If it goes wide, you have a 50-50 kick out coming out. Whereas if you go for a goal, you miss it. That turnover is really being punished with the 3v3 up top, and it can be you can be really punished if you don't get the goal. So you might see a lot less goals maybe in games and more points. But it'll be interesting once we have one full season played, how it pans out.
Yeah, I'm just staggered that they
three goals though in the 4 games at the weekend kind of says it all.
I know
Across Division 1.
You look at round 2 and you say Kerry got 5 in Derry, but that was a bit of a freak. 2 of them were absolutely gimmies. One bounced off a chest, and as tucked in, and the second we hardly even saw.
You'll probably see a lot more worked goals, like Gillen sort of coming through the middle rather than a long ball in one-on-one, because the risk of turning over possession is quite high.
Yeah, I just staggered that they didn't leave it as the 4 for the goal. I know there was a lot of confusion in terms of our old school.
And that was probably the thinking behind it at the time, obviously that's why you have to incentivize more, and they might look at it again.
Yeah, because I know we would have spoke to Colin Collins at the time, and he would have spoken quite strongly about the need for 4, because that was one of the things. Would people go for goals if you
don't seem to be,
or particularly if there's a breeze or whatever? I think that's something they need to relook. I know there's a lot of talk about changes and tweaks to the rules, but for me, I suppose if we get a bigger sample size and you can see that the goal count is well and truly gone, and people and teams aren't kind of even trying to work them anymore, I think you got to look at going back to 4 for the goal. I think you do need to double it up. As much as it will create confusion and scoreboards might need to be tweaked up and down the country, but I think in terms of the game, it potentially needs that.
Yeah, it would be hard to see them, I suppose, moving back now, because there is one rule that everyone seems to want to get rid of, it being the 12 versus 11 at the minute. But maybe that's a debate for another day. Well, there's enough people debating it at this stage. On the Galway bench, if you're looking at the bench from the last day, Daniel O'Flaherty, Keane Hernan, we obviously didn't see Carl Sweeney in there. But are those the sort of players that you would expect to see maybe come into the starting 15 this weekend when you look at the running power Donegal have, Eddie?
Yeah, definitely. And some of the names you mentioned would have been more integrated into the squad over the last number of years. So yeah, I would expect maybe to see that. It's gone back to maybe if you were playing a Kerry or Dublin, you'd be looking for maybe more man markers. I would think, whereas Donegal, they run from deep, so you might just need leggier players. And I would have said a similar thing before the All-Ireland semi-final last year as well, that the likes of Cathal Sweeney and the role that he plays is quite effective in terms of being able to tag and be able to get up and down the pitch quite effectively. Yeah, so I think from that perspective, you will probably see some more of those players coming back in rather than your typical man markers.
Do you think Rob will come into the starting 15 this weekend?
It'll be interesting to see. He might. He obviously playing in Salthill, and he came on last weekend. It'll be interesting to see. I think he's looking fitter, and I definitely think that he has a good opportunity to be in the lineup at the weekend.
Would you see many changes to the team that started against Derry, Jonathan, for this weekend?
Um, I probably think Daniel Flaherty will come back into the team.
Hmm.
Who else? Obviously, you're looking at the caveat of injuries or knocks or anything rest. Like, for instance, if you said before Derry that Killian McDade wouldn't play, you'd probably been quite surprised with that. So if something similar happens, touch wood, it won't. But if there is guys carrying bumps and bruises, that
Yeah,
might.
it could be hard to see even when they play like it's a quick turnaround if he wasn't
It
fit for
is,
last
yeah.
weekend.
If there is something there, you wouldn't risk it. Like, for ultimately isn't a must-win game as much as we would like to win our home games. It's not going to be the end of the world if we don't beat Donegal on Sunday. Who else? Yeah, it's probably like Rob Willie. He might just stay as is, just to try and give him a bit more time and maybe look to bring him on for 20 minutes, half an hour, that sort of time frame. Um, Look, ultimately as well, what way the toss goes will decide a lot of the subs as well, won't it? Like, if it's against the
Hmm.
breeze, probably won't see too many forwards coming on in the second half. You'll probably see more runners or kind of there's to close off. The Call Sweeney one is an interesting one, isn't it? Probably haven't seen as much as I would have thought this year so far to date. But he does on paper seem like the perfect option for Donegal.
Obviously Hernan too. I haven't seen much of
Yeah,
him.
yeah. So Hernan's a strange one, isn't it? Like,
Played no league obviously last year due to
yeah,
Erasmus.
yeah, and like I don't want to go overboard, but I think it's not talked about much. But him getting injured, that injury before the All Ireland, I think was one of the key way. I think it's a different game that Kieran is playing. Let's put it that way. I think it's that strong of a
Yeah.
boot. Yeah, the way the form that he was in, and how fit he came back. Jesus, if there's a few of us over there in America for a while, we certainly wouldn't be coming back as fit as he was. And
He's
that
very
journey was
good as
remarkable.
well. You can play him anywhere.
And like, you look at his form for in Sigerson action prior to his injury, he was bombing in goals and in low scoring, tight, horrible games. So I think that's a good shout. If he is back fit, like, that's a hamstring injury, you have to be careful, as we touch on. Pitches are heavy. Their stadium is going to be a bit of a mess as well, sadly, just given the weather conditions. So it's going to be a heavy, sloggy game. So you can't really afford to take any risk there with a muscle injury. But if he is fit, that would be an interesting one, and certainly a player that you'd like seeing getting a good bit of game time between now and the end of the league, because
Yeah.
he adds a different dynamic completely to the Galway. Like, he can play in multiple different positions, and look, ultimately, without getting too nerdy, the shape of a team is completely different. It's not 3-3-2, 3-3 anymore. It's more 3-8-2 or any sort of variation. 3-3 sorry, and any sort of variation really after that. And your middle third players are kind of glorified half backs, really, aren't they? Up and down, up and down, up and down. So Kieran Malloy is another one as well, isn't it? He's becoming in spells, come on at the end of the game and kind of more of a half forward role. Like, these are players that are. It seems to be so far like there's a chopping and changing and trying to give as many people as much game time as possible, and a couple of changes every game, in that kind of nice way to have for a manager, that you can make a couple of changes, you can refresh things up, but at the same time, it's not like 10 changes coming in where the whole dynamic of the team and the chemistry of the team is taken away. Because, as we saw with that instant, after one sub is made in Derry, that if you don't have the communication and the whole setup with the 3-on-3 in particular, because it's
Yeah.
just human nature to go chasing the ball. And I even saw Conor Glass at one stage when Galway were having that huge passes of possession after the ball, and he spoke about it as well afterwards about that frustration, about that 12v11 still, and he's on halfway line, kind of just chomping to get back, but he can't do anything. So it's very easy to step over. So there's a lot of things that need to be kind of practiced and be gelled together. So I
And
don't see that. Yeah,
it shows the depth as well in the squad, like the names that you're listing, the likes of Kieran Malloy, Jack. We didn't even mention Jack Glynn, like
yeah, yeah.
Sean Mulcairn,
Yeah, I haven't seen Mulcairn yet either.
Carl Sweeney, Robert Finnerty. A lot of them are actively involved in last year's championship and in the All Ireland final as well. So bodes well in terms of depth and also the guys that are unavailable through injury. So
You'd like to see the likes of Jack O'Neill as well, and a few others in the panel. That'll be.
You're just on mute there, Jonathan, I think. We lost you there for a sec.
I was saying the
Uh,
likes of Jack O'Neill as well would be,
yeah.
players that you'd like to see. getting some game time, and I suppose ultimately get as many people game time as possible between now and the end of the league campaign.
Just on it, Eddie, it's an interesting game because for Donegal, they'll sort of feel like last year that maybe the Galway game was a game that got away from them, and Galway maybe rode their luck slightly with that goal from Paul Conroy that bounces over Sean Patton's head. But it's a big one too for Galway because this can be a statement too because the way both teams are, they are likely to be meeting again later on in the year, going on current form.
Yeah, definitely. And irrespective of where things are at, you always want to win every game you go out and play. Some mightn't be as important, obviously, in the context of points you have or don't have. But when you're playing what I would call probably one of the top four teams, and they're probably both of them in the top four, maybe five teams in the country, you want to win and you want to make a statement. And I think Sunday is an opportunity to make a statement. There is a bit of a buzz surrounding the team. They've bounced back well from the All Ireland defeat last year. Obviously, Jim McGuinness brings an extra dynamic to Donegal and an extra sense of buzz around the fixtures. So both teams probably on form, the two best in the country at present, and the league reflects that. So it'll be an interesting battle. And yeah, last year definitely I would say that Donegal side have regrets, and it was a type of game. I would think that if Donegal had won it, they could have easily gone on and won the All Ireland, and Galway would have said the same. They probably will be looking at it and saying we could have and should have maybe won the All Ireland final as well. So very little between both sides, and a good opportunity to gauge where they're at. And like Jonathan touched on, if it could be a good opportunity for Galway to win silverware this year, and if you have an opportunity to win silverware, and I think next Sunday will really put them right in the frame for league final. I think we need to grab it with both hands.
Jonathan, you obviously touched on it. It's not the end of the world if Galway don't get the result, but again, it is a chance to keep this unbeaten record going.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. And keep the momentum and keep the feel good thing. Well, like whatever the result, I think it's imperative we do get a good performance. I don't think we can. We're not at the luxuries of being able to, get getting battered and hope to play on and away you go. Because I think the way the calendar, as we touched on so many times, is so tight. There isn't really any time to get over something something like that. So like by all means, I'm not saying that we'll go with to lose or anything like that. Obviously, the happiest thing and the best solution and the best scenario is that we put up a good performance and that we can not quite take them down a peg or two, but we can get over the line and maybe cut a little bit of that hype and put a couple of question marks under McGuinness, which has been pretty much one way traffic, hasn't it? Really been to date. Really, like you think back the they didn't travel to the first game, and it's pretty like last Sunday seemed to be quite easy traffic, particularly once Armagh went down to 14 players. Um, I think they've had things really under their own kind of scenario and their own tempo, and obviously then the understandable emotion and feel good factor and everything else that goes with it. We're getting Murphy back on the pitch, and I think the TG Carr commentary throwing Ria Rash is almost one of those iconic commentary moments when a commentator just absolutely nails the right thing, and it was.
Is Sean Fitzgerald the man to go wrestling with him this weekend?
I'm not sure anyone's really the right man to go wrestling with Murphy. Maybe Maher and let the two of them off. You'd watch that on WWE or something like that, wouldn't you? He's built like a tank, and what your man was trying to do by heading that lump of a chest, like it's one of those things where literally every pun intended lost the absolute head.
They hurt his head more than
Yes,
Murphy's.
Yeah.
it was never going to end well, was it? Um,
But
uh,
some impact, like he was out for, I think, retired for over 1,000 days or 900 and something, and to come back like that, it's amazing. And like you said, on Ria Rash, but he certainly is back. He's back now with the bang.
Yeah, and you're just waiting. Like you'd imagine Donegal will bring, as they always do, they travel well. They'll bring a good scatter into Galway on Sunday afternoon. So there'll be a big roar when he comes on. I don't anticipate that he will start. Um, but yeah, who marks them is it'll be interesting. Like you'd imagine, like his days out in the middle are probably outnumbered. I don't quite see. We'll see the rumors and the pitch rugs that come out at the start of the year where he plays in goal. That would seem even by Jimmy McGuinness standards, a bit radical, a bit drastic. So you'd imagine he's going to be one of the inside three, and probably if he's in around the house, Sean Fitz, as things stand, is probably the one to tag him. But again, like with Murphy, it's not the one-on-one marking with him, really, isn't it? It's getting the possession of the ball the phase previous to that, and stopping it going into him is the
Kelly could be a good one. Sean Kelly, depending on where they're playing.
yeah,
I
yeah,
always
yeah,
find
yeah.
a
Very
guy
much.
that put someone on the back foot as well.
That's an interesting one, yeah. Like as much as the who is with Murphy, I think he's just going to be an impact player. There's no way he's going to play 70 minutes of this kamikaze football, despite the good condition that he's in. Um, so we'll see. But look, McBurty as well seems to have gone under the radar, player of the week. Beautiful, beautiful footballer. One of these players that you're always expecting him to push on. Like it only seems like yesterday he was just breaking on the scene. Ironically enough, he would have been around at the time of Murphy, wouldn't have, when the two of them when he kind of came through. But a beautiful, beautiful striker of the ball, and like that left boot, he'll swing orange flags for fun as well. So it's going to be so mad in the second half if we get the customary good shout of wind off the Salt Hill coast. Kickouts could be a
If
nightmare on that end. Yeah, if there's a bit of sideways rain to go as well, it'll add to the flavour. So,
And
um,
go back to Finnerty as well. Having potentially look, he doesn't have to start. Robert, he's obviously injured last year in the final and has come back and might be. But what a luxury he'd be for us to be able to bring on, like touching on the wind, depending on usually the wind suits the left footer in the stadium in certain pockets, and he'd be a really good person to bring on to maybe counter the influence of maybe Murphy on the other end coming on and giving the Donegal supporters a boost. So definitely we need to keep ammunition in reserve as well to be able to counter that.
It's interesting too, Eddie, because like you're talking from a Donegal perspective with the inside line, they have Murphy to come in, Gallen there, McBurty there. You look from the Galway perspective, Shane Walsh, Finian O'Lee, Cillian Curran. Like some of these matchups are really going to be intriguing on Sunday.
Yeah, definitely. And Donegal have really good defence as well, and a lad that can put you on the back foot as well, with Morgan and Bon Gallagher, McHugh, and so there's going to be some really good matchups. And equally on the other end, I'm sure Liam Silk is always a good guy to pick someone up. I always find Sean Kelly's good because he's like Jonathan touched on, it's the first ball or the ball before a man gets it, and Sean Kelly's brilliant at that, just getting there, given his athleticism. So again, there will be some really good matchups, and it'll be interesting, and it'll set down a marker for either side for later in the year, because a lot of these matchups we'll be seeing in Croke Park later in the year, be it in the latter stages of the championship. And if you're marking someone and you're there one on one with them, you want to win the battles as much as you can.
How do you see Sunday going, Eddie?
But I think it's going to be really, really tight game. I think Donegal probably have a lot more work done than Galway. On that basis, you'd be sort of thinking that maybe um, they'll. I'm not sure what the odds are at the moment, but maybe Donegal will be slight favourites. Galway in Pearse Stadium as well gives them a little bit of an advantage in that regard. But on the basis of work done to date, maybe Donegal slight favourites. But to be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if it could go anyway. But if I was to pick, maybe Donegal's slight favourites. But as I said, wouldn't be surprised if which side wins. And equally, if Galway were to lose it, I know we're saying about setting down markers and things like that. Don't think they'd be too worried. They've started the season very, very well, and with Tyrone coming to Tuam, we have a good record in Tuam as well. If we were to pick up 2 points there, it's really, really important. I think we need to get one win in the next two games, and that's the most important thing.
And Jonathan, how do you see it going?
probably something similar, to be honest. One of those ones where Jesus, you'd love to beat them, but they are coming with, I think, a little bit further down the road this year, and that's more just fitness and everything that goes with that. It is the two form teams coming together. You'd love a little marker set down and just try and stamp the feet down. That being said, as I touched on earlier on, I wouldn't be overly concerned as if we got a decent performance and Donegal are narrow winners. You won't see anyone crying out at the stadium if that's happened, because I think game the following week, albeit Tyrone will be absolutely hunting for points. On paper, it's a lot easier game at the moment, as Eddie touched on there as well. Particularly our record in Tuam, and actually our record against Tyrone is quite good in Tuam. as well over the years. So you'd imagine that there's potentially another set of points there in that 3-0 against the Ulster teams before we go through the two heavy hitters at the end. Who knows what way the table will develop. But yeah, if we can get it, you'd have to say as things stand, you'd probably edge slightly towards Donegal, but you'd be hoping that Galway can get enough and get over the line. And I think a win could be massive here as well, without totally contradicting myself.
Absolutely, and that is Galway and Donegal 3:45 on Sunday, and for supporters who can't make it, obviously live on TG Car as well. But that's all we do have time for on tonight's show. Thanks to Eddie and Jonathan for coming on.